sort of random other things that I can go over with you guys if you'd like. I was thinking, so like my last class I did deformers, like just a really quick intro to like bend deformers and stuff, because sometimes they're actually pretty helpful in modeling. So I think I might do that again for you guys really quick. Unless, is there anything specifically that you guys want to go over that we haven't gone over in class yet? Besides other rendering engines, I'll do that later, when I actually have like real person files prepared for that. But anything you guys have a burning desire to know about? All right. Night classes are weird, guys. I feel like night and morning classes are really weird because everyone's just asleep on opposite sides of the day. But it's all good. All right, so I'm just gonna make some rectangles for demo purposes. Delete this dude. So I don't know if you guys have ever like played with deformers before. They're used a lot. Not a lot in animate. Well, you can use them for animation. They're quite lovely for animation. I hate animating with them. I mostly use them for modeling. But again, personal preference, they're really helpful. So if you're in your modeling, your little modeling tab here, just to the right of your surfaces menu, you're gonna see this deform menu. There's like 3 or 4 deformers I'm gonna go over today. They're like the ones that I use most commonly. And most of them are under, so if you, again, deform menu, go down to nonlinear. And the first one I'll show you guys is the bend deformer. So as soon as I add that, it adds this little bend handle into my outliner. If I go to wireframe mode, you can kind of see it. It's just hanging out in the middle of this rectangle here. So if I click into that, I'll go into bend 1 in the inputs in the outliner. I can modify the curvature of this, and it will bend my rectangle in a most adorable way. A lot of times people use this to add squash and stretch into their animations. Like if you're animating a cube or something, you can actually animate a lot of that with deformers. And you can see, so like if I have the topology turned on, you can see that it's actually doing a really nice job of sort of squishing the geometry down in a very uniformed way. So if you ever did need to make Pac-Man, if you ever did need to make sort of like a weird curvy shape like this, a bend deformer is like potentially a really, really good way to do it. You can also move, so I'm actually gonna, all right. There's like 2 other settings for bend deformers, the low bound and the high bound. Basically, they just say where on your model is this starting. But again, like not a bad, if you ever just need to make sort of like a curved piece of PVC or something weird like that, you could kind of fudge it with a bend deformer. The other thing you can do is actually rotate your bend deformers around and sort of move them like an awkward flailing motion. In this case, I'm just going to set it to be 90 degrees. And you'll notice that if I change the curvature to 180, it will wrap this thing cleanly around in an awesome circle on itself. I use this far more than I care to admit when I'm making fancy rings. Like I will literally just go into an orthographic mode, throw some curves in there, extrude like my scrolly lattice of like rectangle lattice, and then I'll just take a bend deformer and wrap the whole scroll pattern around in a circle. It's really, really, really easy, and that way I don't need to try to like lay out my curves perfectly along a circle pattern and like make sure it's like the easiest thing ever. Like you can make really fancy, silly looking rings and stuff like that just by using a bend deformer. So they're kind of fun. If you ever need to like model stuff like that or, you know, do anything like that with a bend deformer, you can. I'm actually, yeah. So that's a bend deformer. Questions on them? Cool. The one thing that I should mention, so if you delete the deformer, it will snap your object back to the original shape that it was. There are 2 ways to make the object keep its shape. One is the kind of hacky way, just duplicate the object. Now when I delete this bend handle, you can see the duplicated object stays curved and the other one does not. You can also go to select the object itself that's being deformed and go to Edit, Delete by Type, History. And it's actually just completely gotten rid of the outliner, or it's completely gotten rid of the bend deformer in the outliner. and that'll pretty much lock in the shape of your object. So, yeah. The other one that I use a lot is the, again, Deform Nonlinear Twist Deformer. This one's really fun, and I realized earlier today that it would make a rather fantastic, like if you've ever seen old gumball machines, where they have like those little things that the gumball rolls down, I'm like, oh my god, look, this is like literally pretty much the perfect texture for that, or the perfect model for that. Like if I just duplicated that, I can grab these edges and these edges. This isn't perfect, but you kind of get the point. And be like, yay, gumball ramp. Just like instant. They're like really powerful for stuff like that, and it's a little bit different from a helix because it's not like the inside is closed in. So a lot of times you can even stack like a bend deformer on top of that if you want to, so you could like twist it and then bend it. You can get really, really crazy with these, but yeah. So, and then this is pretty much the same settings as the other ones. It has like a low bound, a high bound, etc. The one thing that you should be aware of, so I actually have these, this dense mesh and this not dense mesh to be aware of. If you are using deformers, you do need to have extra subdivisions in your model. So like if I try to, if I add a twist deformer to this rectangle, just like normal 6-face rectangle, it's gonna stretch and just pretty much just like destroys my model. Like this is not a good model at this point. So again, you do need that extra geometry in there, or else it's not really gonna work super well. Because like Maya doesn't have the information to be able to make that smooth curve on the inside. So any questions about any of that so far? All right. I think there's only one more deformer that I'm going to show you guys, and that is a texture deformer, which are kind of cool. Sometimes I use these. I'll just like show you what this is really quick. So if you go to deform, and then it should just be, yeah, texture. Let's click on that. You can see again that it adds a texture deformer handle in here. And if I go into my attribute editor under the texture deformer node, you'll see this little checkbox here, and again, you can just map in. I'll throw in like a noise texture, because I can. And you'll notice that when I do that, it actually it like changes the physical shape of the object, where like the top is bumpy, the bottom is bumpy, and you can see the geometry on the side here has gotten kind of like smushed and weird. So this is like actually not usually what I expect or want when I do a bend deformer or a texture deformer. Normally I want the actual surface of the object to get lumpier and not just have the topology change. There's a setting for that. So again, just click on your texture deformer in the outliner. Under this texture deformer node, you will see direction, this little drop down for direction. If you set that to, so watch the side of this. I'm going to set this to normal. And you can see, thank you. Oh, okay. And you can see that the, you can see like the geometry, if you look at it from the front, is pretty straight still. But now the actual sides of the object are lumpy. Pretty much, this is like, works in more or less the same way as a bump map does, in the sense that it's just using a grayscale image to texture your object. The difference is that this actually modifies the surface and shape of your object, but it's also highly dependent on your mesh density. Again, like the denser mesh you have, the better resolution you're going to get on your texture deformer. The downside of this is that if you need something really high res, you need a really dense mesh, and computers don't always like that. Take it from me, I know. When you have a 4 million poly plane you're trying to put a texture deformer on. But yes, you can modify like the strength of this, make it, more or less textury. And all this normal direction did is it pretty much just said, when this is set to normal, it says, move the mesh in the direction that the normal is facing. So basically move this outward from the model. it will follow the direction of the normals on whatever faces you have. So when this was set to handle like it was originally, it'll pretty much just move it on the y-axis, which is why you'll see like the side of these plane, or the side of the plane, the geometry wiggles, but like it still stays a flat plane, and then it actually changes on the top and bottom, because that's the only place there's really like translation being applied to those vertices that is visible on the outside of the model, if that makes sense. So again, if it's not behaving the way you want it to, probably just set direction to normal, and then you'll probably be fine. If I were to... This is going to end so badly, but what if I set this... Okay, actually, that didn't do a totally horrible job. If I set this to like 2, you can see that the texture is pretty much gone. And again, that's just because like it doesn't have the amount of geometry required to actually do anything interesting with this texture deformer. But you can totally throw pictures of your face or whatever into Maya and just like do weird, really weird stuff with it. Can make custom shaped lithophanes if anyone's ever into 3D printing. But yeah, so I mean that's pretty much deformers. Anyone have any questions about that? Cool. They're super fun. They're not like... I think it's good to be aware that they exist, because if you realize that you need them for the future, you can come back and you know, look at stuff like that.